Every day, an elderly gentleman goes to the park, his neighborhood park. He sits on a particular bench, watches the world go by, and every day a stranger, that is somebody that he doesn't know, but from the neighborhood, comes into the same park and generally sits down next to him. And after a period of time, one of them started a conversation with the other. And he said, "Entschuldigt mir." He says, "Excuse me, but are you retired? You come here every day like I do?" He says, "Yes." He says, "Well," he says, "I'm retired as well, and I've learned to pass the time by developing a hobby. And that hobby is to do portrait painting." He says, "I never thought I could do it, but I can do it quite well now, and I can sit down, my Einiglach, you know, my grandchildren, and they sit still and patient, and I paint them, and they've come out pretty well." He says, "How about you? Do you have a hobby?" He says, "Yes." He says, I went to adult education." He says, "I learned how to work with clay," and he says, "First I started with pottery, but it wasn't too interesting to me. Now I really work on sculpture." He says, I like that. It passes the time very nicely." He said, "Well, that's nice." Now the men have nothing to talk about, so they're sitting and they're hacking, and they're hacking and rocking and sitting. The third man walks in and sits down, also an elderly gentleman. He sits down on a bench across the walkway. And one of them says, "Excuse me, entschuldigt mir," he says, "but wir haben sich durchgeredet von unseren hobbies. He's retired, I'm retired, we have hobbies." He says, "You come in here," he says, "it looks like you're also retired." He says, "Yeah, retired and off a pension." He says, "That's good." He says, "And wir haben hobbies." As a sculptor, and I've been a painter. And hast du a hobby? "Ja." "Und was ist dein Hobby?" He says, "Ich kenn unfarzen Liederlach." He says, "Unfarzen-Liederlach? Ich kann nicht das begreifen. Das ist unmöglich." He says, "No, ich kann take Unfarzen-Liederlach." She says, "Well, if kannst du spielen auf ein bisschen Happy Birthday?" He says, "Ach, das ist ein Kinderspiel." "No, ich will das nicht hin. This is a Kinderspiel." He says, "If kannst du spielen Deep Purple?" He says, "Pop music. Hess pop music." He says, "Well, in that case, well," it says, "then if she was spielen the overture to William Tell." He says, "Oh," he says, "jetzt. Das ist a schwer Stück Arbeit." He says, "You know the part that goes I always shit in my pants."